Greetings everyone, my name is Raziel and welcome back to the next Warlord overview. Today we're looking at Ezekyle Abaddon. Ezekyle Abaddon was the epic Warlord on the fresh re-release of the faction in the Shadow of the Warmaster expansion. At first, Abaddon was seen as a rather underwhelming Warlord, as he was definitely the slowest Warlord in the faction by quite some margin, a title he would later share with Hellas Sikaar, who we will be taking a look at as well at a later date. Being relatively slow, meaning not offering any sort of direct board control or damage, Abaddon was very rarely used for a long time. That is, until people started to discover Planetary Invasion. Planetary Invasion is a very strong card if you build your deck around it. For 10 energy, it can put into play 3 Astartes from your deck, an effect that, due to not having a cost limitation, can deploy a massive amount of stats at once. Combined with Maligurst, who allows you to play the card even earlier, the Planetary Invasion deck was born. And Abaddon just so happened to be the primary warlord for it for the longest time. Fast forward until today. Things have changed quite a bit. A fair amount of competition for the title of Best Invasion Abuser has arrived. From Hellas Sikaar, fellow slow warlord who excels at direct board control, over God Matara, jack of all trades who can adopt pretty much every deck the faction has to offer, to even someone like Horus Eximent, the warlord with the best draw power in the faction. And yet, Abaddon is still a very reasonable option. I personally even feel like he is arguably the best invasion warlord, something that not a whole lot of people agree with, and it almost certainly does depend on the metagame which one of the warlords is actually the best one. Still, for a warlord as unappealing at first glance as Abaddon, that alone is no small feat. Abaddon has quite a few flaws, however. As already mentioned, he is slow. His ability adds a troop of your choice to your hand. And that is already pretty much everything he does. He does have a purple card, buffing one Astartes by a +2/+2 and giving it frontline, but that is a single-use purple, so it's oftentimes not impacting the game as much as an additional passive ability likely would have done instead. Now, while he may excel at abusing Planetary Invasion because of this toolkit, that is pretty much all he can do. If you are running a different deck with him, there is usually a different warlord that just does the job better. You want to run aggro? Just use Eximent, Varen, or even Mar. What about midrange? Again, God Matara steals the show. There is just no reason to use Abaddon outside of a Planetary Invasion strategy, which in turn means that every time you face a player using Abaddon, you pretty much know what to expect, which cards to look out for, and which tools you likely need to save to counter his invasion. In short, while Abaddon may be a worse warlord than most of his brothers, his ability to abuse Planetary Invasion rather effectively definitely carves him a niche within the mighty Sons of Horus. Sadly, this niche is all he has. Had we ever gotten a truly strong contender for the title of Best Invasion Abuser, Ezekyle Abaddon pretty much would be without a job right now. But we didn't, so Abaddon still enjoys a decent level of playability. Knowing all this, it should come to no one's surprise that the deck I made for Ezekyle Abaddon is an invasion deck. Fun fact, this will be the 3rd Abaddon invasion deck on this channel, which I think is a new record for an individual warlord and strategy, at least for me. Now, let me immediately address the elephant in the room, Forge World. What the hell is Forge World doing in this deck? To understand the reasoning, let's talk about the deck's general strategy. As already mentioned, the key combo is playing Maligurst into Planetary Invasion, resulting in a bunch of bodies on your board, likely threatening lethal immediately on the follow-up turn. This is the ideal scenario. Cards like Lead the Spear Tip allow you to do this as early as the 7 energy turn, and Throne of the Heretic allows for slightly easier access to Planetary Invasion. The rest of the deck, with the exception of the invasion targets of course, is geared towards ensuring we will get to the point of playing this combo, whether through board control or stalling. But despite all of this, there have been quite a few games where I had a Malagurst in my hand at the 8 energy turn, but there still was no invasion to play him with. Enter Forge World. Forge World is, if you really think about it, a slightly worse Planetary Invasion, putting in play 4 troops instead of 3, but without the drop pod and with a cost limitation. However, Forge World does not require us to run any other bricks in our deck that we don't want to draw into, instead summoning the units out of thin air. Additionally, it is a tactic, meaning we can pair it with Malagurst. This means that we essentially have 4 copies of Invasion in our deck, which significantly increases the chance of us being able to nearly guaranteed play Malagurst on curve with a big tactic behind him. But let's finally get to the card by card. First is Caliban Voss Fighter. This card doubles as both jam and anti-stealth, allowing us to not include any dedicated anti-stealth tool in the deck otherwise. Avatar of the Four is an amazing tool, allowing us to guaranteed survive an enemy turn. This can be especially valuable when we have a Malagurst combo already in our hand for the next turn, or are sitting on a Lupercal Pursuant to close out the game. Furious Shooting is a staple burn tool. In this deck it oftentimes functions more as a control tool, but the option of shooting face definitely comes up more than enough times to make it still the preferred option over something like Fracta Edificium. Lead the Spear Tip is the first piece of the combo. It allows us to draw into Malagurst, giving him a cost reduction on top. This means that we basically have 3 cards in our deck effectively named Malagurst, the man himself, as well as 2 cards that are guaranteed to draw into him. Clothal is up next. In the previous builds I never included him, but this has changed now. His passive makes it very easy for him to survive the enemy turn in the early game. This means you can very reliably follow up by buffing him with your purple card the next turn, creating a strong front line that can absorb a lot of damage and wreak havoc among enemy lines. While he does weaken the invasion pulls from time to time, 2 big bodies plus Malagurst are usually still more than enough to close out the game. Flamer Sergeant is a great way of controlling the board in the early game, dealing damage to all enemy troops. Him being in infantry also means that he won't interfere with the invasion strategy. For the Chiari Thalax, most of these things are true as well. Once again, we are on 1 copy of Death Dealers. Just like with Eximent, 1 copy is enough because of Thalax, and in this case also the Flamer, and because we have Caliban Voss covering our anti-stealth needs, we can use Death Dealers over Call of Cowardice. Lastly, for 4 energy is Factory Overdrive. This used to be an insanely popular and widely used staple card, but since it got nerfed to 4 energy, it has fallen off quite a bit. Still, it being the only remaining ramp tool in the neutral card pool means we got to use it in this deck. It generally pairs nicely with our counterattack, essentially turning it back into a 3 energy card. 1 copy of Crush the Weak, our hard removal as usual. Akron Foul for once isn't just a good beat stick, even though that is still greatly appreciated, but his passive will actually come up in a reasonable amount of games, giving flank to his brothers from the Planetary Invasion, allowing for an immediate takeover of the board. A great troop both inside and outside of the invasion. Next is Throne of the Heretic. This is the final remaining piece of tactic draw in standard mode, taking over the mantle from Command Bridge. I am honestly not that big of a fan of the card myself, because especially in Abaddon it can be tricky to find the right moment to invest 5 energy into it, but it is undeniably a necessary tool to find invasion more consistently. Lupercal Pursuant, just like Furious Shooting, is a great burn tool. However, in this strategy, you will find yourself using it on enemy troops a lot more often to get rid of threatening units to pave the way for your invasion. Speaking of invasion, we have now arrived at the dedicated invasion drops. These guys are all in the deck almost purely to be dropped via invasion, and you want to avoid drawing them. Darfa Nerva increases the stats of all other invasion drops via Marks of Chaos. Praetor Goliath can deal a small amount of damage at the end of the turn, and his natural drop pod makes him more flexible outside of invasion. Justerin Elite is a mandatory card, being the only frontline Astartes and therefore ensuring the opponent can't just kill us after we play Invasion. These are generally enough bodies to get one full power invasion off, while not breaking your hands too much in the early and mid game. You can certainly change the ratios, like running 1 Goliath and 2 Nerva. I just prefer them like this. Additionally, you can exchange Goliath or Nerva for something like Chieftain Squad, but I would strongly recommend you at least start with these guys and these ratios, and only make changes after you've done some testing yourself. Next is Malogurst, one of the core cards of the deck. He effectively reduces the cost of Invasion and Forge World to 8 energy, or 7 energy if you manage to play Lead the Spear Tip, which is a ridiculously low price to pay for the value these cards represent. He is the main reason this strategy can even exist. Next is Invasion, the final core card of the combo. Dumping a number of big Astartes at once represents an immediate threat that needs to be dealt with, else the opponent just dies. There is, of course, counterplay. AoE removal like the Great Tithe, Bitter Duty, or Infidus Imperator are all very real threats. However, most of these can be played around. Infidus Imperator is generally very expensive and can thus not be used to counteract a 7 energy invasion or an 8 energy invasion if you got off a factory overdrive or went first. Bitter Duty needs to fulfill its event requirement. Only the Great Tithe is a true consistent out to the strategy, and even that can be overcome with enough energy manipulation. Lastly is Forge World. I've already said most about this card, but another great use of it is playing it after the opponent used one of the aforementioned AoE board wipes to clear our invasion. As Abaddon, you can generate multiple copies of Malogurst, allowing you to occasionally follow up a Malogurst invasion combo with a Malogurst Forge World combo, which can be just as deadly, especially considering the enemy just wiped the entire board clean of potential counterplay. Again, for Abaddon specifically, this feels like the secret tech option to truly unlock his full invasion abusing potential. I want to make it clear that the other invasion warlords likely don't need or want to run this card. Excellent has enough draw power to just draw into invasion or throne, Sekar has enough board control to just stall out turns till he finds them, and Mar likely isn't even playing a deck entirely centered around invasion, he just uses it as a finisher in a slightly heavier mid-range deck. It really is Abaddon's more consistent access to Malogurst and multiple copies of Malogurst that makes Forge World a very real option to consider. And with that, we have gone over pretty much everything that needed to be said. Overall, the deck is a control/combo strategy. Your main goal is to set up a Malogurst plus either Invasion or Forge World, allowing you the use of multiple of these high power strategies. In the early and mid game, your primary task is to not fall behind too much on board, and most importantly, to stay alive. Abaddon's ability can also supply you with a few early and mid game bodies to throw onto the board as distractions. Again, your primary goal should be a win via invasion. To conclude, Abaddon is a very good invasion warlord, in my opinion, potentially the best. However, that is all he can do. Using him in a non-invasion deck is not recommended, his niche is invasion, and he does it well. That concludes the Abaddon overview and invasion deck guide. I'll see you soon for the next warlord to be covered, Tybalt Mar. Until then, and enjoy the replays.